Hi, I'm Amy Willis with AdamSmithWorks. Today I'm joined by Bryan Caplan. Bryan, would you like to introduce yourself to our friends?
Sure. I am Bryan Caplan. I am a professor of economics at George Mason University, and I've been blogging for EconLog for over 15 years now.
Wow. And by the way, I got to give a shout out to the shirt you're wearing. If you guys haven't checked out Bryan's graphic novel about immigration, you absolutely should.
Thank
It's
you
terrific.
much for the plug.
Yeah, you're welcome. I've told Bryan before I've used that book with middle school students, with high school students, and it certainly would be appropriate at higher levels too. So, in any case, this is the Smith Questionnaire, and so I have 10 questions for you, Bryan. And if
All
you're
right,
ready, we'll just get going.
let's do it.
All right, Bryan, would you rather be loved or be lovely?
Loved, definitely.
Okay. Wealth of Nations or Theory of Moral Sentiments?
Of the nations.
How come?
Let's see. Theory moral sentiments is just way too non-cognitive for me. So it may be a good description of how people make faulty moral judgments. I don't think it's a good description of actual moral judgment.
All right. Bryan, if Adam Smith had a dog, what kind of dog do you think he'd have?
I want to say an Irish setter, even though he's up in Scotland, but I can't think of any Scottish dog.
Well, that's all right. All right. What do you think is the best antidote to the torpor induced by the division of labor?
Hmm. Let's see, I want to say the internet, but that's a little bit too easy. How about actually, the better answer is working around people that you really like. That's in fact, there's been research on what happens when people win the lottery, and most people don't want to quit their jobs, actually. And the main reason they do is just that the money puts a wedge between themselves and their former coworkers they used to get along with. So it really shows that what the main thing that people are getting out of work is actually the social element of having a place to go to see people to do things with. So I'm going to go with that.
It's a great answer.
Good people, working with good people.
All right. Now, here's perhaps the most important question. Do you think Adam Smith would rather fight one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
I think he would rather fight one horse-sized duck because he's normally stuck fighting 100 duck-sized horses. As he explains, when you're trying to teach economics, the problem really is death by a thousand cuts, and there isn't any one person to convince. You got to convince the world, and even though he's an immoral writer, he still hasn't been able to pull it off. So that's my answer. It would be much better if there was just one person that you could lean on and say, come on, let's hash this out until you admit you're wrong. And the problem is the real world doesn't give us such a person. It's just an endless cycle of the repetition of the same stuff that people have been saying without thinking for thousands of years. So that's what I think you'd say.
I got to tell you, Bryan, I think that's my favorite answer yet.
All
That's
right,
a really good
great.
one. All right. Smith says that one of the times we experience sympathy is when we share an appreciation for the same piece of literature or music or work of art. So what should people read or watch or listen to feel sympathy with you?
Feel sympathy with me. Well, wow, there's so many possibilities. Right now, I'm rewatching the entire Dexter series for the third time because my 10-year-old son wants to watch it. And that is a show that captures a lot of my feelings of, well, let's see, uncharitably, self-righteousness, and just being the superhero in my own life movie, right? As well as just not caring very much about what other people think ultimately and trying to get along with others. So if you know the show, Dexter's always bringing donuts to the office because he's on a constant crusade to hide in plain sight and to seem like the Mr. Nice Guy while he's out at night being a vigilante. So that's one that comes to mind, but maybe just because I was watching it last night. Let's see. Things that capture more of what I'm about. I kind of want to say Dumb and Dumber. It's a movie where the first time I saw it, the entire theater could hear my screaming laughter. I was crying for most of the movie. I was laughing so hard. I was actually taken to the movie by the godmother of my wedding. She had never seen a movie with me, and I don't think she ever recovered just sitting next to me. So
Have you
there's
seen
that.
another movie with her?
No, I never did. Never did. Something else that I'm a big fan of is The Room, the cult movie where you shout out at the screen. So I really like that. Although, in terms of really getting what's in my heart, it's the movie about The Room that really gets to me, The Disaster Artist. It's the story of this wonderful but a friendship between a fairly normal guy and an extremely eccentric guy. And that really communicates what I'm going for in life. I'm the eccentric guy in my own mind anyway, but I want the normal people to love me. Why won't you love me?
Well, Bryan, hopefully this will get lots of people to love you.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know that movie.
How could it not?
I don't know that movie. I'm gonna have to watch it. But I love Dumb and Dumber, and I love Dexter also. So let me ask you this: if Dexter had read Adam Smith, how might the series be different?
Wow, that's really good. Let's see. So, I mean, there's a few things. So, I mean, at least, Dexter has a lot of self-awareness, even though almost anyone would call him compulsive. He realizes what he's doing and that he's got a problem. He just doesn't want to stop. So you might say that reading it, he would add in a lot of commentary about unintended consequences because that's a lot of what the show is about. He does something, he thinks that he's fixing things, but he actually sets in motion a chain of other problems. So could be that. I mean, probably also get a lot of voiceover based on the theory of moral sentiments, just describing what people are like. Many people think of Adam Smith as being someone with serious Asperger's who's then learning through scholarship what most people know instinctively. Although ultimately, I think that's unfair because it just overstates how much insight a psychologically normal person has. I think that most people act very impulsively, so that doesn't, so maybe that it's easier for them to predict what someone will do because they act in impulse and so do most other people, but I don't think that's anywhere close to the same thing as insight.
Cool. All right, next question. Bryan, what does your impartial spectator look like?
My impartial spectator. I guess I'd say that my impartial spectator is more of a never-ending dialogue between what I'm impulsively want to say and what a more reasonable version of me would say in response. And then it's often the case that the impulsive person winds up winning the debate and say, you think that you've got this all figured out, but you're the one calling me impulsive. No, you're the impulsive one. I've thought this through 17 levels, and yeah, I may be a little bit agitated, but if you'd gone through all 17 levels, so would you. That's my impartial spectator.
I love it. All right. Also, Smith warns us that too severe an application to study sometimes brings on lunacy and frenzy. Should we be worried about you, Bryan?
Not me. So I actually am not sure I've ever worked a 40-hour week in my life. Right? So, many people say, you have a great productivity. Like, I get my productivity from working every weekday. Every weekday I get something done, almost always something in a long-term project. And actually, that is one of the most important things for having a body of work, is not that you work a lot of hours, but just that you don't give up, persistent like a bulldog. So, I actually spend so much time on hobbies, and, I play pool every day for half an hour to 45 minutes with my kids. I go on a lot of walks. Actually, lately I've been doing like 4 or 5 walks a day. I do lots of stuff with my kids. I read comic books almost every day. I watch movies, TV. So I work on games. So there's a lot of that. So I don't think that I'm anywhere near in danger of overstudying. When I was younger, maybe it was a little bit different, but even there, I've actually, my kids make fun of me for just having ants in the pants. I don't like sitting still for that long. So, yeah, in principle, it could be a problem, but it isn't really a problem for me.
I can relate. I'm an ants in the pants kind of person myself. So
Yeah.
I'm always in motion.
Almost the only time I really sit still is when I am in animated conversation. That I could completely lose track of time. Actually, maybe writing comic books. That's something where I also lose track of time because it's this great flow experience where even when you can't think of any new words, you can tweak the visuals, you can move the word bubbles around, say, no, it looks better here, so that you can always be busy. You never have the sense where you're writing where you're like, what do I say next? Can't say that, can't say that, can't say that. Arg.
That's cool. I never thought about comics like that in that sort of
Yeah.
production sense. I like that. Okay, here is our last question.
All right.
If an afterlife exists, what would you like to discuss with Adam Smith when you get to meet him?
Wow. Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. What to do? What to do? Let's see. I mean, honestly, my first inclination is say, all right, this stuff was all great, but there's been a lot of progress in the last 200 years. Let me get you up to speed, Adam. So that's a very narcissistic answer because instead of me trying to learn from him, my instinct is to make him into one of my graduate students and try to educate him. In terms of what I would really want to ask him, gee, let's see. I mean, so actually, I think so here's what I think I want to do. I would actually want to go and put him to the test. Thou shalt, thou shalt not put the Lord thy God to the test, but thou shalt put Adam Smith to the test. So I think I would say, all right, so you remember, you died, but let's assume you haven't been watching the actual development of the world. So what do you think actually happened to the United States? Could you just describe what things are like there? What do you think has happened to the world economy? What do you think China's like now? Remember you wrote about China, so how do you think it turned out? Just ask him a lot of, what do you think governments do now? And just see whether he actually has anywhere close to an accurate picture of how the world evolved over the almost 250 years since he wrote The Wealth of Nations. And then if he did it really well, then I would say, okay, very well, I will now call you master because you were able to figure out these incredible things. You had great foresight. On the other hand, if you're just totally wrong, that's where I would say, all right, well, look, being smart is great, but it's no substitute for actually having a lot more information. And now let me share that with you, Adam.
Wow. I would love to hear that conversation myself.
Yeah, me too. It'd be great.
Bryan, thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
I'm sure our viewers will look forward to your answers and you will be loved.
All right. Please.